A line divides a peninsula, but it also divides a people, a history, and a future. This is the story of North Korea, officially the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, a nation shrouded in secrecy, shaped by conflict, and defined by a singular, powerful dynasty. How did one of the world's most isolated states come to be? And what is life truly like beyond the carefully curated images presented to the world? Our story begins not in Korea, but in the ashes of World War II. For decades, Korea had been under Japanese rule. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the Allied powers, primarily the United States and the Soviet Union, faced a question: what to do with Korea? They decided to temporarily divide the peninsula along the 38th parallel. The Soviets would oversee the North and the Americans the South, with the promise of reunification after a stable government could be formed. But the Cold War was dawning, and this temporary line began to harden into a permanent border. In the North, the Soviets installed a young, charismatic, anti-Japanese guerrilla fighter named Kim Il-sung as the leader. He quickly consolidated power, building a state in the image of Stalinist Russia, centered around a powerful cult of personality. In the South, a pro-American anti-communist government was established. Tensions soared. Both sides claimed to be the rightful government of all of Korea, and reunification by force seemed inevitable. On June 25, 1950, North Korean troops stormed across the 38th parallel, igniting the Korean War. The conflict was brutal, drawing in forces from the United States, the United Nations, and eventually, China. Cities were flattened, and millions of lives were lost. After 3 devastating years, an armistice was signed in 1953, not a peace treaty, but a ceasefire. The fighting stopped, but the war never officially ended. The border was re-established near the original 38th parallel, creating the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, ironically one of the most heavily militarized borders on Earth. With the peninsula now permanently divided, Kim Il-sung embarked on a mission to build a self-reliant socialist state. He introduced a state ideology called Juche, which translates to self-reliance. In theory, it meant that Korea would forge its own path, dependent on no one. In practice, it meant absolute state control over every aspect of life, from the economy to the thoughts of its citizens. The state became the sole provider of food, housing, and employment. Loyalty to the leader, Kim Il-sung, the great leader, was paramount. After Kim Il-sung's death in 1994, a moment of unprecedented national mourning, the mantle of leadership passed to his son, Kim Jong-il. This marked the first communist hereditary succession in history. Kim Jong-il, known as the Dear Leader, adopted a military-first policy, prioritizing the needs of the Korean People's Army above all else. This era, however, was also marked by immense hardship. The collapse of the Soviet Union, a key benefactor, combined with natural disasters and economic mismanagement, led to a devastating famine in the mid to late 1990s. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, are estimated to have perished. It was during this period of crisis that North Korea intensified its nuclear weapons program, seeing it as the ultimate guarantee of its survival against perceived threats, primarily from the United States. The world watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. North Korea became synonymous with provocative missile tests and defiant rhetoric. The nation's relationship with the outside world has been a roller coaster of diplomatic engagement and hostile standoffs. Attempts at negotiation, like the 6-party talks involving China, Japan, Russia, South Korea, and the U.S., have repeatedly stalled. The central issue remains North Korea's demand for security guarantees and the lifting of sanctions, versus the international community's demand for complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. This stalemate has left North Korea in a state of prolonged economic and political isolation, punctuated by moments of high-stakes diplomacy, like the historic summits between Kim Jong-un and international leaders. In 2011, Kim Jong-il died, and power was transferred to his third and youngest son, Kim Jong-un. Educated in Switzerland, many observers hoped the young supreme leader might usher in an era of reform and opening. In some ways, he has. A new class of entrepreneurs has emerged, and the capital, Pyongyang, boasts modern skyscrapers, water parks, and a more visible consumer culture than ever before. However, this surface-level modernization belies a much harsher reality. For the vast majority of North Koreans, life remains a struggle. Outside the relative prosperity of Pyongyang, resources are scarce. The state's public distribution system for food has largely faltered, forcing people to rely on private markets, or jangmadang, to survive. Freedom is severely restricted. There is no free press, no political opposition, and no freedom of religion. The entire country is subject to an all-encompassing system of surveillance and social classification known as songbun, which ranks citizens based on their families' perceived loyalty to the regime. This system determines access to education, jobs, and even food. Human rights organizations have documented a grim picture of life for those who fall afoul of the state. Reports detail a network of political prison camps where individuals accused of political crimes are subjected to forced labor and severe mistreatment. Access to information is tightly controlled. The internet is available to only a tiny elite, while most citizens have access only to a state-controlled intranet. Radios and televisions are fixed to receive only state-run broadcasts, filled with propaganda praising the leaders and vilifying their enemies. Yet, despite the immense control, information from the outside world does seep in. USB drives and SD cards containing South Korean dramas, Hollywood movies, and international news are smuggled across the border, primarily from China. These small devices offer a glimpse of a different world, challenging the state's narrative and planting seeds of curiosity and desire for change among a population that has been kept in the dark for generations. Today, North Korea stands at a crossroads. Under Kim Jong-un, the nation has declared itself a nuclear state, a status it is unwilling to negotiate away. The economy continues to sputter under the weight of international sanctions, while the people navigate a complex and often precarious existence. The future is uncertain. Will the regime maintain its iron grip, or will the slow trickle of information and economic pressures lead to fundamental change? The story of North Korea is not just about missiles and parades. It's a deeply human story about resilience, survival, and the unyielding desire for a better life. It is the story of a nation divided, a people separated, and a history that is still being written, one day at a time, behind the most fortified border in the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of the world's most secretive nations. If you found this documentary insightful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.